Good evening. That's a hell of a way to kind of clear my throat right into the microphone as we get started. How is everyone doing this evening? Hopefully well. We are here last week of September, even though it is the second day of October. We're going to be covering the final batch of releases from September and the end of the third quarter. And it's ending strong, which is nice. I was not super pleased with how the month started, but it is finishing quite well. I do hope my headphones make it all the way through. I had to switch out, and I do not know how charged they are, so but we'll figure it out. We'll see. Just so we are clear, there are 16 albums. We are going to be looking at rap, then electronic music, then pop and indie, and the vast majority of what we're going to be looking at is rock and metal this evening, although I do want to not point out, but I suppose make it clear that this week it is actually very heavy in the rock end of things. It is less metal than it has been a lot of weeks. So I'm not going to just make sure I've got everything set up here. The music is on. So I'm going to get us started here. I'm also getting my laptop all set up at the same time. And yeah. So the first thing that we are going to take a look at and to listen to is, like I said, it is rap and hip hop. Now, this right here is an interesting release. It actually came out earlier in the month, like very early in the month, September 5th. And it's one that I had kind of bounced around with for a little bit, but never actually sat down and listened to all the way through. And I finally did. This is Prison Tape Volume 3, and the artist, if you will, it's not really an artist. It is the production, the label, if you will, is Moodsphere. Now, the story with this album is that, and I obviously there's no way for me to actually check this, but this is Prison Tape Volume 3. It's the third volume in a series called Prison Tape. So as you might guess, the artists who are recording here are all currently locked up. Now, I've always been a little confused as to how people who are in the corrections system in the United States are able to record music, even more so here in Russia, but I do suppose that it is possible, and that's what we have here. As a result, we have this we have a very raw rap sound, but because it is a mixtape, realistically, there is no one specific style or sound. All of these different artists are bringing their own particular approach, their own flows, their own lyrics. It does feel very genuine, though. I will say that. I think that's one thing. It might be a little bit rough around the edges, but I think as a whole, it's a very interesting album. And even if it doesn't feel like it's a mixtape, so I mean that's ultimately what you're gonna get going into it. But it is a good one.
Мне надоели нули, мы пришли, чтобы забрать этот кэш, потому что мой генг налитый. Единственным в своем роду видеть мир, таких не было. Мы пришли похоронить пальцы сложно. Это то, что ты увидишь, последнему проговоришь. Я не слышал ничего лучше, чем Moodsphere Volume 3. Послушай внимательно, если все это дерьмо, то хотя бы с характером. Какая игра тебе нахуй, когда ты и так уже должен по партии. Ты шахматный конь, хотя даже не шахматный, да и не конь, шахмат тебе. Те пацаны, с кем сижу, мне семья теперь. Запоминай наши имена с братьями. Double G, Triple X, назвали по именем Бог, мы запольский. Мы амбассадоры, дубные УМС. Сайт же полный призм, ракеты без кепки и воду. 2019, подвал, кровь в тучу, мы тусим.
So right, kind of like that. There is a lot of trap here, right? But then there are tracks like this, which, I mean, I guess you could still maybe call them trip, but right, definitely a smoother sound, less of that sort of street trap. Пустота, что между нами, ерунда, я заполни ее нулями. Я могу сливать направо, лево. If you look at the artists who are here too. You will start to see some of them repeat. And just another one here. So, right, that's just 3 tracks here. Different vibes on each of them. Different instrumentals, right? Even just different rappers across all of them. So.
Не в тех текстурах, что все застряли. Лет на 5 наш вижен ваш опережает. Холод подвалов, подъездов и улиц. Пацаны заняли свои места.
And I think this is even like a more pop.
Разорви шаблоны, нет, и не перестал. Мне не нужен ни ребрендинг, ни рестайл. Мы будем везде, как электричество. Ты будешь пиздеть, но я отличник. Тогда все на своих местах, да мы стали на старт. И я помню слова где-то 5 лет назад. Я стряхнул этот пепел вчера в асфальт. Ты посмотри в небо, пацан, каждый 3-й звезда. Кого нахуй послать, ты бандит, ну раз так, каждый 3-й звезда. Ща пойдет звездопад.
Звездопад, yeah. Star, с неба сыпятся звезды, yeah. Это зоопарк, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different styles going on there. A lot of different sounds. I did just get the message too that it is a bit hard to hear when everything is going. So let me just take a second to try to adjust that a little bit. But all right. So anyway, again, for a more authentic rap sound, if you will, something that is perhaps a little less cookie cutter, then I would say, yeah, not a bad choice. That is Moodsphere. That's the group or the organization putting it out, and the release is Prison Tape Volume 3. The other rap release this week is Killa'Gramm, which is kind of a clever name in Russian. But anyway, Killa'Gramm, and the album is Muzыка для мужчин. Now, online, this also came out earlier in the month. So, I saw just a lot of negativity around this release online. People saying that the artist is trying too hard, that his style isn't cool anymore, the lyrics are bad. But when I actually started listening to the album, I was reminded that the online discussion about rap music, especially Russian rap music, is probably more toxic than the metal community these days, and that's saying a lot. The lyrics here are for sure nothing special. It's just, kind of your basic rap. But the topics, the delivery, the instrumentals create this whole package. It's that commercialized hard street, something like Rick Ross, but with that fast, aggressive white guy style flow quite a bit. I don't know. I enjoyed the album. It's a type of album that I would spin it again. And it's one of those things that I feel like this type of music I would have probably had on in the car in high school, or feels like it would be good in a skate video, which is always in my opinion, a good sign when it comes to rap music. I'm gonna jump ahead.
Поэтому несусь, будто курьер из самоката. Мои друзья центровые, но они за МКАДом. Жить надо так, чтобы не успевать тратить зарплату. Сколько лет в игре, але чтобы ты от этой прикормки дурел. Классика навсегда, 3 полоски лат-трейнер. В подвале ебашим только рэп, это апгрейд. Время такое, со мной тревожный чемоданчик. Хотел отмыться в Анапе, еще больше испачкался. Парни решали задачи не те, и тот потрачено быстрее. Деньги заманчиво, но untouchable. Передвигаюсь на коне в стуке кибодач. Пока рэперы варят, хоть не повара, не сварщики. Концерты будто молоко, ведь их сворачивают. Дышать хотите, заплатите и видите кап.
Also some pretty good guests on here as well. The Chemadon. Молодой Vladimir, not a huge fan of. Молодой Kalugo was not bad too, but...
Пацаны встают на ноги, и суммы в карманы капают. Я тут у своих не крапалит, я даю крабы. Им двигаем грамотно в салоне крауна. На бите жарко сауна, дымит с Мариной шаурма. Руки за головой, парней хоть не кидают аут. Упаси бог от этого, пускай судьба побалует. Я не из тех, кто воздух дал и в пустоту канул. Я в грунтру рэпа вбит свой, а значит отдалываю. Я юзал крокодил, но пола лакоста водила протянула укса. Я как сквозь баб серьезно в инструкции.
Alright, and one more here. Just...
Улицы пахнут, пацаны взрывают, но это не теракты. Мы двигаем своих, это непотизм, алло, подвал ищет таланты. Твоя бить закрепела, после встречи с нами вырезала гланды. И стилю буду хуракан, это новые песни о главном. 24, это код дрила, на битах белая горилла. Подняли на улицах филки, он Лярига, ПДВЛ фирма. Засунь в свой ганфингер, твой рэп-план, это Гилтон. Я жарю биточки на гриле, well done, это мясо тигра. И пусть как можно позже появится.
So yeah, I mean, again, is it anything game-changing at this point in time in 2025? No, but like as a package, it's fine. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not setting out to do that. As far as I can tell, too, Killa'Gramm is also not a spring chicken, if you will. So, yeah, I think for what it is, it's a fine release. I enjoyed it, and if you enjoy that sound, then that's going to be fine too. So yeah, that is the artist Killa'Gramm, and the album is Muzыка для мужчин. But okay, we are moving on now to electronic music. And the first, and I'm going to, we're gonna keep moving ahead. The first one is actually, it's various artists. So this is just a collection. Every single track, there are 9 tracks here, are different producers. And I'm not normally into the heavy club music. Like I'm just not into that. But this also came out at the very start of the month. September 4th. And again, this has been in my playlist for a while, and I kept kind of picking away at it, listening to a track here or a track there. And I just sat down and listened to it. And again, this is not my music necessarily, right? So for people who like really sort of club music, then this is going to be definitely your jam. It's just hard, it's heavy, it's fast. Like I said, each of the tracks is from a different DJ. The DJs are all resident DJs out of the Random Club here in Moscow. So if your clubbing days are behind you, or they never had, you can live vicariously, I guess, through it, through this album. It's one of those releases too that if you want to get some work done, it's the type of music that's just really fast and repetitive, so it can kind of help lull you into a very productive zone if that's your type of thing. And I will say that a few of these, like Ramy and Dame, I don't know exactly how you pronounce them because they're DJs, goddammit, they always have ridiculous names. Some of these are relatively large or relatively well-known artists of the DJ scene here too, but anyway, that's just based on my online observations. I'm just going to jump in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this because, again, it will become clear very quickly what this is. I mean, for sure, this opening track here, I listened to this more than once too, right? When I was just like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and actually listen to this album now, because like the way this starts out is definitely, it's kind of as catchy as this type of music can be. Which is also up for debate, but yeah, right. It's club music. It's not gonna get too crazy. And I don't remember. It's been a while since I didn't. Yeah, right. And then you have this type of club music in here too. which normally I would listen to this for like 10 seconds and be like, nope, I'm good. But I was already 4 tracks, or this was the 4th track, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna let it ride. And again, this is not the type of music that I would listen to every day. Very few people would listen to this every day, although I guess the club scene does exist, so. But like I said, if you're looking for something that's, I don't know, if you need to zone out with something that's very fast and rhythmic, then this can do it. Like I hate using the term background music, but I feel like club music is kind of background music ultimately, right? It's just about the rhythm and the drive, and how physically you react to that. That's one of the main ideas, realistically, of the music. So describing it as background music is probably not such a horrible thing. So you get the idea, right? It's that type of club music. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of this genre. In fact, I'm not a fan of this genre realistically at all. It's one of those things that I can listen to it from time to time. Whoever organized this album did a very good job with putting that track, the Angel track, as the first one, because it does make it a little bit easier. And I think the second track construction is also quite... You ease into the album, and then by the time you're already into it, you're just kind of, you're along for the ride at that point in time. So that is the RNDM NIGHT Volume 2 album, and it's various artists because it's a compilation album. But now the next album too, I was not expecting this. This is the album Trip by Ohota. This is a big one, 26 songs, almost 2 hours long. Again, after last week's 3 hour by, what was it, Crisis by Toy Shen, I did not intentionally stumble into a 2 hour one. It just kind of happened. This is also kind of that deep, heavy club music. The album artwork it's rivaling Malevich here, but it's just 26 of those fat, like thick tracks. It's that dark club electronic music, really hypnotic at times. It's bouncy at other times. Sometimes it's ominous. Sometimes it's uplifting. It is all over the place. The moods transition back and forth, but the quality and the heaviness are consistent all the way through. There are a few moments where it starts to drag, or it kind of feels like it's just falling into a repetitive, but then there'll be these tracks that kind of pop up. And could it have been trimmed a little bit? In my opinion, yeah, but I'm sure that there are going to be people who really enjoyed these other tracks, and it's just, I don't know. Again, it's a very specific type of electronic music. And I, for the life of me, could not come up with a genre for this. Like, which is good because the actual style shifts from track to track, but it does have that kind of dark electronic sound. It's like a dark club sound. But this is something that I could probably listen to regularly. I know, like I had it on when I think last weekend when we were cooking or something like that, getting ready. It was in the evening, and it's just like, it's rhythmic enough. There's moments that borderline on melodies. Right? Like, it's ominous and it's inviting at the same time. What are some other... Kiss is the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's got that kind of retro wave sound as well. There are some. Yeah, this is one of those tracks that when I listened to this the first time, I was just like, yeah, this is just phenomenal. So simple, but the repetition really drives it home. And then you have ones that are more atmospheric. So yeah, really long techno album, but also one that, like I said, it's I don't know, it's just good. It's heavy, but it's also just a very good one. Realistically, again, it's like a double album type thing. So I don't know. I feel like this is one of those that if I wasn't trying to burn through as many albums as possible, I would want to spend a little bit more time with this one. But that is the album Trip, and the artist is Ohota. Okay, we got 2 left. The next one is an EP, Cramped House. Arash and Quasar. We have actually seen these artists before earlier this year. And yes, the last release was really bouncy, really fun, and this is basically more of that. This is their take on the Chicago house style, but there's a lot of interesting things thrown into the mix there. They got there's like a track, black guitar that's just got like this really funky bass line and an electric guitar throughout it. But then there are other tracks that have more Middle Eastern vibes to it. I'll just play it. There's the guitar. Granted, it's not some amazing solo or something like that, but there's just like this guitar over the top of this, like, already bouncy and kind of, I don't want to say not very serious house track, but just like kind of playful. This one again with the vocal track gives us some more exotic feel, if you will. Vaguely Funky Town by Lips Incorporated, right? And then the first track here.
This is a house.
I mean, the first track is probably just like all around the most solid, but it's the most simplistic, but it just gets straight to the point. Bongos or whatever. So yeah, 4 tracks. Still pretty. You get about 20 minutes worth of music here. Just fun, bouncy, Chicago style house on the EP Cramped House by Arash and Quasar. Which again, this is the second EP that I have talked about from them so far this year. So this duo here got a pretty good track record, I guess, thus far. Maybe they put something else out that I missed, but yeah, fun stuff. And that's okay, right? Like, we're in that time of the year Again, this is music that if it comes out in the summertime, you don't have any questions, right? It feels like it's designed for just that summertime atmosphere. But hitting, this came out mid-September. But yeah, hitting already in the autumn, it's one of those situations where, and there's actually an album that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on here. I forgot there is an other category this week. There is an other category that will come relatively soon. But the autumn, I think, is one of those times of the year when sometimes this playful, upbeat music kind of takes on a different role. So finding little gems like this are at least from a sonic point of view, refreshing when sometimes maybe the visual aspects of the world outside are not so. But the last electronic release that we're going to talk about is kind of one that I've already talked about. This is QTOPIA, the director's cut by Kuok. So this came out, I think, in April originally, QTOPIA. And when I saw the director's cut, I initially was just going to ignore it because I figured it was just going to be like 3 or 4 tracks that were probably remixes. But as it turns out, there are 9 new tracks on the director's cut, which is something like 25 minutes worth of new material. So it's not just tacked on at the end. The other thing is these tracks, I have all of them checkmarked here. They're interlaced throughout the pre-existing album. Obviously, like towards the end. Oh, no. There are 2 tracks that I did not check because I just was not interested in them. Because I was not a huge fan of them. But regardless, the other 2 tracks are down here at the end too. So realistically, the director's cut really does feel like a director's cut. And I am going to be honest, I did not sit down and re-listen to the entire album from start to finish. I just specifically went through and pulled the new tracks to listen to the 9 new tracks to see if there was anything special or any like reason. Like, were these things that maybe should have been left on the cutting room floor, or was there a valid reason for releasing an extended version of this album? And I think that there was. I don't know how well they fit in the general flow, but I imagine that they probably do, considering the fact that they are not placed all together at the end, but they are kind of interspersed throughout. But let me go ahead and...
Я живу в это время, не знаю, как все сложится. Я живу в это время, и мне не надо большего. Я живу, даже если под ногами все крошится. Я живу, пока в небе солнце строит мне рожицы. Я не буду спать, ведь я боюсь, что пропущу рассвет. Последний раз я не буду спать, ведь голоса, что в моей голове.
Electropop. As I would little Daft Punk style right there. We have to assume that the track titled Crystal Castle is probably supposed to sound a little bit like the group Crystal Castles. And it does.
крути, я пробовал все тайком. Всегда результат один, разбитым стеклом витрин. Влетаю не в свой подъезд. Я чувствую, как внутри меня сжигает гипес. Я чувствую, как внутри меня сжигает гипес. Я чувствую, как внутри. Морщины на лице становятся обыденностью. Я так заебался играть радостного, создавая вид.
So yeah, the 9 tracks here realistically are their own EP in their own regard, and having them again woven throughout the pre-existing album. I guess what I would just say is, if you did not listen to QTOPIA when it came out in the first half of the year, then this is the perfect time to go actually sit down and listen to it. Go check out the director's cut, because it's not bloated. It was already a big album that didn't feel big, and an additional 25 minutes, as weird as it's going to sound, probably is not going to make it feel any bigger. If you did listen to it in the first half of the year, then this is probably a good, valid reason for you to go back and check it out again. So yeah, that is the director's cut of QTOPIA by Kuok. And that is it for electronic music. Moving on to pop and indie, we have only 2 releases this week. The first one, came out later in the month by a group called Kaleidoscope, and the EP is Ni местный, ni чужой. Just really beautiful music, also great cover art. Really beautiful music, really warm, reverb-laden vocals and guitars, a lot of the sort of shimmering cymbal sounds, and all the songs are kind of about death and loneliness. Again, if you don't understand Russian, then just really neither here nor there. But the juxtaposition does work if you do. I think even if you're just listening to it as a musical package, it's just really good. The variety of sounds, like the core elements of the sound, are unchanging across these 4 tracks, but the mood and energy shifts a little bit from track to track. So they're all different, but none of them really feel incongruent with the other ones. Just go ahead and play a little bit. So, right, that's the basic sound. Right, but the horns come in here, yeah? So, if the track that I just played before this felt a little more like, I don't know, shoegaze or alt rock or something, this definitely has more of that warmer indie rock sound, so... It's a very beautiful 4-track EP here, and just very pleasant. Like I said, even though the lyrics are quite morose and not depressive, but just sort of hyper fixated on one thing, musically it's just a very nice package. So That is the EP Ни местный, ни чужой by Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope, I suppose. All right. And then there's only one other release in pop and in indie this week, and that is Перья, птиц, пронзают, провода by Quo. This is a difficult album. I'm just going to level with you. It's a difficult album. At times, it's that artsy indie rock, and then at others, it's kind of avant-garde jazz rock, which realistically, artsy indie rock and avant-garde jazz rock, it's not a huge jump to make, but still, typically they're not like together on the same album. The core here is experimenting with what is ultimately rock music, specifically indie rock. I should clarify. Some of these songs are going to appeal to everyone. Others do feel as though they are designed for a stage performance, where you could have just like that explosive energy and that more the poetic nature of the line delivery. Some of these things feel like you would want to see them live to have that sort of visceral experience with the packed crowd around you, and things are different sometimes when it's live. Yeah, this release, I'll just be honest, probably isn't going to be for everyone, but it is a debut out of Vladivostok that I think is another good example of why the Russian Far East right now kind of feels like a hotbed for indie and experimental music. There are some really different things happening out there. Hear that more avant-garde edge, and that's that jazz rock thing that we're going for, that I mentioned like maybe a bit like Of Montreal. Here, there's just like a lot of stuff happening almost parallel to each other. And then here we have, if I am remembering correctly, a track that is going to feel just like a more classic, like again, experimental indie, artsy indie, but yeah, Of Montreal is maybe a good reference point. And then just the opening track, just a second. Right. So we've had 4 tracks, and there definitely have been different sounds on each of them. as I kind of alluded to when I was talking about the album before I actually played any of it, it's kind of a difficult album because there's so much musically going on in terms of the sounds and ideas. But if you get into it and you're open for not locking into a specific sound and groove, and you're ready to kind of go with the band wherever it decides to go, then there's a lot of interesting stuff here. But yeah, like I said, I understand that's not going to be for everyone, but I do think, first of all, it is his debut, so it'll be interesting to see what this collective, I think there's like 7 people in the group, what this collective puts out in the future. And just in general, if you're interested in more experimental, avant-garde, indie type of stuff, Russia's Far East, especially Vladivostok, seems to be the place for that right now. But the group is Kyo, and it's a K and a Yo. Kyo. I'm assuming that's how I'm supposed to pronounce it. And the album is Перья, птиц, пронзают, провода. So that is it for pop and indie. I told you we have an other album, though. And I actually alluded to this last week with Jazz. This is the album Skywalker by Jazzhouse Trio. And this is not my top pick for the week, but I really, really like this album. And I think that this is an album that especially, well, let me talk a little bit about it. So this is the type of jazz that feels like the Charlie Brown soundtracks all grown up. Obviously, the songs are longer and more complex, but there's still that sense of wonder and lightness. But the tracks, again, they don't shun away from motifs and song structures. Like, it's not exactly pop, but it's definitely nowhere near to free jazz. The Charlie Brown, that level of joy and energy and just motion in the music. That's what this album feels like. In my mind, I mentioned earlier how when we move into autumn, and obviously especially into winter as well, sometimes music is just like a really good thing that we want to turn on. We want something that kind of brightens the room around us because that light is not coming in from outside. And this is one of those albums. This feels like an album that is going to be perfect for the autumn and the winter, for those days or evenings when you're at home and you're cooking or you're just doing odds and ends around the house, maybe having a glass of wine, right? Maybe just drinking tea. It's just like, it feels cozy. Maybe that's the best way of describing it. It's an album that makes you feel cozy. And I'll just play it. Jump ahead a little bit though. I mean, it's kind of hard to sample the songs in a jazz album in a meaningful way, but that motif that they introduced at the beginning, if you're listening, you can still hear it there. Just reinterpret it each time it comes back up. And you can hear that bounce and that lightness. Even though that this is like very well put together, it's not simple music whatsoever. So I want to introduce the motif, the main idea musically of the song. So, I don't know. Like I said, this just feels cozy. The type of thing you want to put on if you have guests over, or, again, if you're just not going anywhere. The first snowfall of the year, a rainy autumn afternoon. Nelly, welcome back. Yeah, it has the Charlie Brown energy, and like every year around the holidays, I mean to go back and listen to the Charlie Brown soundtracks, but I never do. And now that I have this, I probably should still go back and listen to the Charlie Brown soundtracks, but this, yeah, I don't know. So, the other thing that I really like about this album too is a lot of jazz musicians really lean into the jazz aspect of it, whereas this definitely does lean closer to. It feels like something that like a jazz band, a high school jazz band would play, where it's structured enough. Although there is no verse chorus structure here, it is ultimately just like kind of this long flowing thing. But as you listen to it, you never feel lost. The songs always feel like they have direction, and that there is a structure and an idea here that is everything is spinning around. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Again, this album, Skywalker, by the group Jazzhouse Trio, just a very, very nice, warm album. And as the weather gets colder and darker, this is exactly the type of music that you want. It makes you feel good and warm. And maybe even put a bit of a bounce in your step. So, really good stuff. Okay, I've discovered the tab limit. We are on to rock and metal, and we've got 4. Wait, 4. What am I talking? We have 7. Now I am going. This is a fair warning. This right here is probably the noisiest and harshest release that we're going to be taking a look at. This is actually, it says it's a single. I'm going to call it an EP, WWWWWL90. I don't know. I feel like that's just a random collection of letters and numbers. Maybe it means something. This is actually from a group of digital noise rockers, if you will, out of St. Petersburg. This is... I actually talked about one of their EPs. It's weird. I feel like my thing's getting weird. I actually talked about one of their EPs, like maybe in February or in March. So we've actually seen this group before. The group is Машина, полная. Yeah, it's noisy and chaotic. Yeah, turn it on, turn it up, thrash about, that type of stuff. Just so we got the digital elements in there.
Вы когда-нибудь слышали о декларации об отмене рабства? Отставить! Я не слушаю хип-хоп.
Then you get into the noise rock. Honestly, the second track is probably the best. So yeah, you get the idea. Very short 3-track release. Again, it's noise rock, but it's a digital sound, right? A lot of electronic elements in there, a lot of the glitchy sounds and effects like that. So again, what was the name of the release that we looked at? Slow Burner was the EP from earlier in the year. And this, like, I think this, yeah, I mean, this is an EP at 12 minutes with 5 tracks. This one with 3 tracks at a little over 9 minutes is a single. So whatever, it's their second EP of the year is how I'm going to qualify that. That is, again, Машина, полная, and the release is WWWWL 90. I don't know. Moving on, though. Like I said, that is probably the harshest release of the week. Heavy is a hard one to quantify. The next one is going to be quite heavy, if we will. This is the EP Lost and Untold by a new group out of St. Petersburg, Heathen Held Nothing. Again, dark, noisy, and heavy. These guys sound a lot like Swans or Daughters, if you're familiar with those groups. There are moments that feel a little bit like Tool as well, but that's not the main source of inspiration here. Lyrics are in English, and the lyrics are understandable. Very minimalist album cover as well. Even though the lyrics are understandable, they kind of take a backseat to the just pummeling of the instruments. Now, I will say there are some moments across these 3 tracks that do drag a little bit, but not so much in that navel-gazing way as you might get with Swans, where they just kind of get into... Swans will sometimes just get into this repetition where it feels like they're spiraling and losing the thread. That actually feels like this is something that the band could maybe do in the future. But yeah, this is honestly, it's a promising debut. This type of rock is not super common in any country, so it's kind of nice to hear. What's interesting is that even though the vocals are so front and center a lot of the time, I found listening to this that I was subconsciously tuning them out so I could just kind of hit that rhythm section and just sort of get into that dun 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 dun, right? Whatever it happened to be, whatever the riff happened to be. And that's maybe also something in the future that maybe they could maybe play around a little bit with. Obviously, I don't want to say the vocalist should just remove himself from the equation. That's not what I'm saying, but think about how that fits into the wall of sound that effectively is being created otherwise. So yeah, you get the idea. Again, it's not so harsh like you might have from a lot of metal releases, but it's rock, but it is still very heavy. It's very just heavy. So 3 tracks, about 17 minutes long. It's sizable for what it is, but we'll have to wait and see what they... Again, this is their first release. That is the EP Lost and Untold, and the group is Heathen Held Nothing. Okay. Next up, we have an instrumental release. It's from earlier in the month. This is the album Two Shores. The artist is The Only Fall. It's just one guy who wrote this, just sort of progressive post-rock. It is a bit more straightforward in the first half. The second half does have some moments which are a bit more abstract and atmospheric. It just has, regardless though, kind of that forward movement, keeps the whole thing chugging along throughout. It's nothing like revelatory in terms of guitar music or even post-rock or whatever you want to call it. But it's kind of, again, background music if you just want to get work done. Like I mentioned with the club music, it's got a good drive, and you can just put this on. I don't know, take care of whatever you need to take care of. Or you can actually just sit down and listen to it too, because it is... Right, like just really driven, but move a little further in. It does kind of, we start getting more of an atmospheric bit here. But this track even shifts into just like a regular, right, kind of gets into that instrumental rock guitar thing. Although the last track, if I remember correctly, is definitely the most post-rockish, if you will. Anyway, you get the idea. It's kind of guitar-centered post-rock. The album is Two Shores. The artist is The Only Fall. Very straight to the point. All right, up next, we have an album which, when I listened to it the first time, I was a little confused because I could have sworn that this was a post-metal group that I had seen in concert, like really loud and fuzzy post-metal at a post-rock concert of a few years back. I was not mistaken. It is the same group. This is Absurde, and the album is Flicker in the Rearview. The group retooled its sound completely. It went away from the post-black metal sound that they had before into what at this point in time is effectively gothic rock with some progressive rock leanings. If you're new to the group, then the shift in style is not going to mean anything. But if you have heard the group before, it is one of those things that you mentally have to prepare yourself. It's a little bit like Catatonia, for those of you who would recognize that group. A little bit like Opeth as well, but not as heavy. Again, this is a fine album. I was mixed overall, partly because I was not really expecting this sound going into Absurde's album. And I do hope that in the future they will move back, or that they'll back away from the vocals just a little bit, and they'll push the instruments more, because that's one of the strong things on this album is the instrumentation and the playing of it. But Like I thought, I was just like, okay, yeah, so it's not the post-metal sound that I remember so much, but they're doing a post-rock thing when I first heard it. So this might be one of those situations where singing in Russian would possibly be better. The English lyrics are kind of whatever, and the delivery. I mean, I understand if you want to appeal to a larger crowd, you go English, so I understand why, but this style of gothic rock is already kind of a limited genre as is. So. Also, they re-recorded 4 of their old songs that were originally that post-black metal, and they're completely unrecognizable. Not that it's bad, it just feels like they have 4 completely new tracks, even though they're technically new versions of pre-existing tracks. So, again, this is pretty innocuous, right? Like, it's not bad. Some people definitely are going to enjoy this more than others. But at the same time, it's not, like, fantastic in any measure. You might, though, hear a little bit of what I was talking about, though, with, like, the actual instruments feel like they could be doing something. Like, I don't know. I feel like the vocalist being so front and center is a bit of a distraction at times. So, I mean, I like this track though. So anyway, yeah, that is the album Flicker in the Rearview. The group is Absurde. Yeah, not what I was expecting. Not bad, but not great. Just a nice release, worth a listen. Ultimately, this one's a little bit more interesting. I'm going to do the thing which I always do, which is, how do I actually? Where is the? Is it Obuch? Yeah, Obuch is the name of the group, and this is Noc Kaldovstva. Probably mispronouncing that too, but it's 11 o'clock. So, this is an album which, again, had been sitting in my playlist for a while now. Well, an 18th, so about 2 weeks. And I just kind of been ignoring it. But this is one that I'm really glad that I got through. The sound here is something between Iron Maiden, the alt rock of the 2000s, power rock, and Russian rock from that same time. That Russian rock bit too is pretty important because there's a heavy dose of like folk here, motifs and instrumentation. Even some tracks that feel a little bit closer to what we would typically think of as folk rock or folk metal. But this is the type of folk metal, for example, that I would actually like to hear more of, where it feels like the folk elements are just a spice added to the overall music and not like their own special idea that they are constructing songs around, if that makes sense. The group, which is from Tula, says that they were inspired by Nightwish, Rammstein, System of a Down, Korn, Karol и Shut, which is a Russian group here, and that can easily be heard on all of the tracks. There are tracks where you're just like, oh yeah, that's System of a Down. There are tracks where you're like, that's Rammstein, right? The lyrics tell stories that feel like they've been ripped out of folklore, but they're actually just the creation of the group. It's just like a fun rock album. And I feel like it's a little bit heavy at times. It's a little bit lighter at times. I feel like it's the type of album that for rock could theoretically appeal to most everyone, which is hard to do realistically.
Олела заря, кровавым стал небосвод. Начало нового дня им предвещало поход. Угроза дальних земель грозилась выкосить рот. 200 лучших бойцов шагали в серую даль. Опора, гордость отцов, клинков наточена сталь. И вера в силу мечей гнала тумана пель. Содрогнулась табу, сметоносной стеной летел, летел.
Right? The flute. It's just there, and it feels like it should be there. If you removed it, the song would continue like normal, but it just feels like a nice layer they've added on top. That's what I mean when, like, this is the type of folk metal that I could get behind.
Вязнут стылые ноги на забытой дороге, где селенья лишь одни кресты. Пробирает стужей кости, не осталось даже злости. Как огню сейчас я был бы рад. Снегопад.
There's the power metal. But that flute is just there. This honestly feels a little bit like Marilyn Manson too, The Beautiful People.
Кто расскажет небу лицу, как из царской темницы убежал разбойник резвый только на двоих своих ногах.
That would get a little bit of a System of a Down thing going on here. Like the Serge.
Не пробиться, та темница за горами, за лесами в ледяных снегах. Лихо оседлав волчицу без стремян.
But none of it feels overly aggressive. I mean, like, this is probably one of the heavier tracks, if you will. I was going to say it sounds a little bit like Primus, but it's maybe a bit of a stretch. But, like, the vocal delivery and when they actually get into the verses and the choruses, it dials back the heaviness. Like, there's just like bits and pieces. It's a back and forth thing with it, so.
Страшен холод, он ей друг, и из-под тонких неж.
Got the female vocalist. Alright, we gotta get that checked as well. There's just a lot of different rock sounds across this album. And the thing is, it doesn't feel like they were trying to cram in as many different sounds as they could. It just feels like hey, what if we wrote a song like this? Sure. I think this is one too that also has more of a folk sound as well. Yeah, there's the, I don't know what the hell that is, the pan flute. But This is just a very nice, well put together rock album that feels like it drew inspiration from like somebody's iPod shuffle from 2006, right? And like that's awesome and that's fantastic and it works. Also, the album artwork is phenomenal. So that is the group Обух, and the album is Ночь колдовства, or the Night of Enchantment, if you will. Обух is like a thunderhead or something along those lines. Anyway, good album, really fun. Yeah, but these next two, I can't. These next two are just good, and they're also both groups that, if I'm not mistaken, let me go ahead and pull up Evolve here. They're both groups that. No, Evolve is a rather new one, but I think they're older gents. Anyway, let's talk about this album here. I have to be real. The album artwork here, I don't know what's going on. So 1-. The press released the text that I saw used over and over again for this album said post-rock, melodic hardcore, and emo punk as the genre tags, which maybe the last one, emo punk, is kind of close. It just feels like they didn't listen to the thing, which is why I hate seeing the same press release used again and again and again. Realistically, this is somewhere between 90s alt rock and suburban punk. The closest comparison and the sound, I kept hearing Bad Religion. You could realistically draw parallels to other punkorama groups from the same time period. Or if you want a Russian parallel, a Russian sort of comparison, Naive. I think Naive is also a very good comparison. This is actually, I remember why I thought this was an old group. This album was actually recorded 6 years ago, or like was in the process. It took them 6 years to get this album out for whatever reason. But there was just, I listened to this album a number of times. There was something so earnest about the sound. I just wanted to listen to it again and again. Like a disc in a CD player, right? Like back in the day when you just have the disc spinning and you would just have it repeat all, right? And the music would just sort of, you would just get kind of wrapped up into it, and you could spend a whole afternoon listening to the same album. That is how I felt with this album. So again, just think Bad Religion, but not quite, a little bit different. Even the vocalist feels a little more. So again, right, you got that sort of suburban punk sound, a little bit of the alt rock. The more I listen to this, the more I hear Bad Religion. Or again, if you're familiar with Russian groups, Naive. Yeah, I mean, like, every single track. Just listen to this thing on repeat. It's just like I mean, there probably are lots of groups still in 2025 doing this sound, making albums that sound like this, but I'm not encountering them. And a lot of times the punk type of stuff that I encounter, maybe it's like Sum 41, maybe it's other sounds from the same era, but this specific sound, and I was never a huge Bad Religion fan. I was always more of Lambert's sort of field of interest. So simple, but it's so well done. And maybe it just, I haven't heard, I went back and listened to some Bad Religion too, and it's not just Bad Religion, it's not a Bad Religion knockoff, but I don't know. There's something about this album, maybe it's just me, but yeah, it feels so well put together, and after 6 years, it's seeing the light of day now. I'm glad that it did. So that is the album Evolve. That is a self-titled album by the group Evolve, with whatever this album artwork is. But the top pick of the week is the album Matros Nastroyke by the group Sakura. This is a group that here in Moscow made a pretty big splash in the indie rock scene about 20 years ago when they debuted back in like 2006 or something like that. And then their last album was released in 2009. And then for 16 years, there just was no new music. They would put on concerts like once a year maybe, but people just kind of assumed that they had moved on and that they were, not doing anything. Then they resurface with this, which is just an absolute masterpiece of a fourth album. I can't compare this to their previous works because I didn't know of them, right? I had to do a little bit of digging into the group. So how this stacks up to their earlier work, from what I have seen, it is like on par with their earlier work. And I know they won some awards when they first debuted on the scene. What does this sound like? It's the post-Brit rock. Think Block Party, Phoenix, Arctic Monkeys, Foals, Battles, Muse. There's just so much going on in the mix. I would even say earlier this year in the first quarter, and I talked about it in that video, I mentioned the group Dajcie Tank, Chrupka, which in the first quarter I thought was one of the best sort of indie rock releases, and there's some of that energy here. But I think this album is maybe even better than that one. I did not get to spend as much time with this album as I would have liked to, but I do think that this is probably, I've already seen people online saying that in their opinion this is the best album of the year. I don't know if I would go that far, but there really is, you turn this thing on and musically you feel like you've just been dropped back about 20 years ago, which, yeah, I don't know, I'll just... Also, phenomenal album artwork.
Мотора сердечный слышался зов. Дело бросаем и гнали без тормозов. И этот сказочный маяк постоянно манит. Звук полюсов соединяем магнит. Мелькает мгновенье, и вот мы уже встречаем его на нулевом рубеже. Но если ты тайну любви не постиг, от страшной ловушки тебя не спасти. Погибай ты так и знай, это чары неземные. Лови сигналы позывные, есть повороты на этом пути. Так сбавь обороты, как ни крути. Здесь Корея, здесь ты и я, параллельные прямые. Лови сигналы позывные, будет печаль.
I don't know. I maybe I'm losing my mind, but like it's so old, but it's so fresh. I don't know. It's like an unearthed. This 100% feels like Muse, right? But the era of Muse from about 20 years ago. Like the good era.
Славные лица, имена, знакомый трюк. И спираль превращается в замкнутый круг. Жертвы в углу дрожат, нервы на острие ножа. Пора начать соображать.
They didn't release anything for 16 years, and then they dropped this. Like, what a comeback. Like, that's just phenomenal. Great stuff.
Боли вслепую мстят, над головой вовсю свистят. 3 дня подряд развлекает Зимун и шлют привет. Чушь свою несут колоннам вслед. Враг вокруг настал в конце концов. Враг.
Realistically, though, and this is the last track I'm going to play because I think the opening track, like, if you hear this and you're not intrigued to hear what else this group has waiting in store on the album, then I don't know. But like, this first track is
Разбитые окна проникла ночь.
the sounds just
И тени, как змеи, ползут по
so
ковру.
well constructed.
Последний троллейбус уносится прочь.
I'm not gonna sit here and
Снова
deconstruct it, but
появится только к утру. Намного не надо лишь
the chorus
где-то
is
стоять и ночь продержаться. И завтра на утро мы будем опять в любовь погружаться. И хочется просто.
so yeah, 3 tracks right there. The last one you heard was the opening track, which I'm not gonna say it's the best track on the album. I don't think that's the case. It is a very good track on the album. I think it's one of those albums where, depending on your mood or depending on how many times you've listened to it, there are going to be different best tracks. There are so many good tracks on this album. I know that I don't have every single one of them liked, but that's more just a thing where I was actually doing that to make it a little bit easier for me to remember which ones I wanted to highlight, because I do think that there are some that are a little bit hookier. But yeah, I do think that this is probably in at least in that kind of realistically, this probably should have been in the indie category, now that I think about it. And perhaps the other one as well, but oh well, I organized stuff at the last minute, and I perhaps was not thinking, this is probably one of the best indie rock albums of the year. But the album is Matros na Strojke, and the group is Sakura. So, and that will do it. That is all for this week, and that is all for September music, and that is all for the third quarter. We are now coming up on the final few months of the year. It'll be interesting to see. I know. I'm actually kind of curious. I know in the States and in Europe that around like the second week of December, you just stop getting new music releases. So because we don't have Christmas in Russia in the same way that we do in Europe or in the States, it'll be interesting to see if the new music releases continue more or less up to the final week of the new year. I know that the 31st this year is on a Wednesday, so I will be curious to see if, for example, that final Friday of the year, the 26th, the 26th, it'd be interesting to see if there are going to be some new music releases even then. Or if it'll be kind of how it is in the States and in Europe, where after November, it just kind of starts to die off. Very, very well might be the case. But we don't get the Christmas music record season like you do see in the West. There really aren't that many seasonal songs. That's something we can talk about a little bit more when we get to that period of time. But yeah, September ended up being a pretty good month, all things considered, even though it started out perhaps not the best. Tomorrow is the first Friday of October, which means that will be when, well, in about 30 minutes here, when we hit midnight, is when most of the new releases for the week will be uploaded to the music streaming services. So I will start digging through them already tomorrow. But yeah, we'll take a look at all the fun October stuff next Thursday at 10 p.m. Moscow time, which is when I always do that. So hopefully there was something that was of interest to you here this evening in terms of music. But yeah, tune back in next Thursday, 10 p.m. For the news, Wednesday and Sunday at 9 p.m. You all probably know this by now. Yeah, everyone have a good evening or a good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you happen to be out there. Take care of yourselves. I will see you when I see you, and until then, пока-пока.